A father's desperate love collides with a billionaire's ruthless world when Noah Carter accepts an impossible deal: marry a woman who sees him as nothing more than a tool, or watch his dying daughter slip away. But some contracts can't contain what they awaken. If you want to see how far love can bend the rules of power, stay until the end. Hit that like button and drop your city in the comments so I can see how far this story travels. The hospital hallway smelled like disinfectant and defeat. Noah Carter sat in a plastic chair that had probably cradled 1,000 other parents in the exact same position: elbows on knees, face buried in calloused hands, heart trying to hold itself together through sheer force of will. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, relentless and clinical, washing everything in a sickly white glow that made the world feel like it was already half dead. Through the window of the pediatric ICU, he could see Mia, 2 years old, 23 pounds, a lifetime of hope wrapped in a body that couldn't seem to hold on. She was sleeping, or sedated, he couldn't tell anymore. The machines around her bed beeped in rhythms he'd memorized weeks ago, each tone a reassurance that she was still here, still breathing, still fighting. Her tiny chest rose and fell beneath a hospital gown covered in faded teddy bears, and her dark curls splayed across the pillow like they belonged to a child in a storybook, not a girl whose organs were slowly turning against her. Noah's hands shook. He pressed them harder against his face, trying to stop the tremor, trying to stop everything. But his body had stopped listening to him months ago. Sleep deprivation, 3 part-time jobs, and the constant gnawing terror of watching your child die in slow motion. It all added up. He was 32 years old and felt 60. His back ached from carrying industrial tile at the warehouse. His knuckles were split from scrubbing restaurant floors on his knees after the dinner shift. And his heart was just gone. Carved out the day they told him there was nothing left to do. "Mr. Carter?" He looked up. Dr. Patel stood in front of him, clipboard in hand, expression carefully neutral. She was good at that. The face that said, "I care, but I've seen this before, and I know how it ends." "Yeah." His voice came out rough, like gravel scraped across pavement. She sat down beside him, and that alone made his stomach drop. Doctors didn't sit unless the news required it. "We got the results back from the specialist consult," she said quietly. "The condition Mia has, it's even rarer than we thought. There's a treatment protocol, but it's experimental, and very expensive." Noah didn't blink. "How expensive?" "Around 2 million? Maybe more, depending on how her body responds." He laughed. It wasn't a real laugh. It was the sound a man makes when the universe has just told him a joke so cruel that the only response left is absurdity. 2 million, he repeated. "I'm sorry," Dr. Patel said, and she meant it. He could hear it in her voice. "There are programs, financial assistance options. I've applied to all of them." Noah's hands dropped to his lap, limp and useless. "I've been denied by all of them." She hesitated. "There might be one more option." He looked at her sharply. "There's a private medical foundation," she continued, choosing her words carefully. "They fund cases like Mia's. High risk, high cost, low success rate. But they're selective, very selective. And they don't just hand out money, they want something in return." "What kind of something?" "I don't know the details. But the woman who runs it, she's not exactly known for charity." Noah's jaw tightened. "Who is she?" Dr. Patel pulled a business card from her pocket and handed it to him. The name embossed across the front in sharp, elegant script made his breath catch. Elena Voss. Even Noah, who spent most of his time elbow-deep in grease or mopping floors, knew that name. Everyone did. Elena Voss was a billionaire before she turned 30, the kind of woman who appeared on magazine covers with headlines like "The Ice Queen of Finance" and how Elena Voss built an empire without breaking a smile. She ran Voss Industries like a military operation, ruthless, efficient, untouchable. People didn't work for her. They survived her. "She'll see you," Dr. Patel said. "Tomorrow, 2 p.m. Her office downtown." Noah stared at the card. Why would someone like her care about Mia? "I don't know. But if there's even a chance—" She trailed off, letting the sentence finish itself. He nodded slowly, sliding the card into his jacket pocket. That night, he didn't sleep. He sat beside Mia's bed holding her small hand in his, counting her breaths like they were the only currency that mattered. Every inhale was a gift. Every exhale was a countdown. "I'm going to fix this," he whispered into the dark. "I don't know how, but I'm going to fix this." Mia didn't answer. She just kept breathing. Bets. Voss Industries occupied the top 15 floors of a glass tower that looked like it had been designed to make people feel small. Noah stood on the sidewalk outside, staring up at it, trying to remember how to be something other than tired. He'd borrowed a jacket from his neighbor, too tight in the shoulders, too loose in the waist, and worn the one pair of dress shoes he owned, even though the sole was starting to peel away from the leather. He looked like a man pretending to be put together, and he knew it, but he didn't care. He pushed through those revolving doors and into a lobby that screamed money: polished marble floors, minimalist furniture, a reception desk that looked like it cost more than his car. A woman in a tailored suit glanced up at him with the kind of smile that was friendly in shape but empty in practice. "Can I help you?" "I have an appointment with Elena Voss." 2 o'clock. Noah Carter. She checked her computer, then nodded. 43rd floor, the elevator on the right. He rode up in silence, watching the floor numbers climb. His reflection stared back at him in the polished steel doors. A man who looked like he'd been through a war and lost. The elevator dinged. The doors opened onto a floor that didn't feel like an office. It felt like a gallery. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed the city below, and the furniture was the kind of understated luxury that only the very rich understood. Everything was white, gray, or black. Clean lines, no warmth. A woman in her mid-20s sat behind a sleek desk near the windows. She looked up as Noah approached. "Mr. Carter?" "Yeah." "Ms. Voss will see you now." She gestured toward a set of double doors. Noah's pulse kicked up. He wiped his palms on his pants and stepped forward. The office beyond was exactly what he expected: massive, immaculate, and cold. A wall of windows overlooked the city like a throne room view. The desk at the center was made of dark wood and glass, and behind it sat a woman who looked like she'd been carved from ice. Elena Voss. She was 30, maybe, though it was hard to tell. Her face was smooth, sharp, beautiful in the way a blade is beautiful, perfectly made and utterly without softness. Her hair was pulled back in a tight bun. Her suit was charcoal gray and fit like armor, and her eyes were the pale blue of a winter sky just before a storm. She didn't stand when he entered. "Mr. Carter," she said. Her voice was cool, controlled, and completely devoid of warmth. "Sit." Sat. For a long moment she just looked at him, not unkindly, not coldly even, just assessing, like he was a contract she was deciding whether to sign. "You're here about your daughter," she said finally. "Yes." "Mia, age 2. Diagnosed with Harrington-Lee syndrome. Prognosis without treatment. 6 months, maybe less." Noah's throat tightened. Hearing it laid out like that, clinical and factual, made it harder to breathe. "The treatment exists," Elena continued, folding her hands on the desk. "It's expensive, experimental, and not covered by any insurance plan in the country. You need $2 million. You don't have $2 million. So you're here." "Yes. And you're hoping I'll give it to you." He met her eyes. "I'm hoping you'll help me save my daughter." Elena leaned back in her chair, studying him. "I don't do charity, Mr. Carter. I'm not asking for charity. I'll work. I'll pay you back, however long it takes. At your current income, it would take you 40 years to pay back $2 million. You'd be 72. Your daughter would be 42. Do you see the problem?" He clenched his fists in his lap. "Then tell me what you want." She tilted her head slightly, and for the first time something flickered in her expression. Not quite amusement, but close. "I need a husband." Noah blinked. "What?" "Not a real one," she clarified. "A contract, a performance. My investors, my board, my shareholders, they're old-fashioned. They trust family men, stable men, men who look like they have something to lose." She gestured toward him. "You fit the profile." "You want me to marry you?" "On paper, in public, for appearances." Her tone didn't change. "You'll live in my home. You'll attend events with me. You'll play the role of a devoted husband. In return, I'll pay for Mia's treatment, all of it, and I'll cover her medical expenses for the rest of her life." Noah stared at her, trying to process what he was hearing. You're serious. I don't joke about business, Mr. Carter. Why me? Because you're desperate, she said simply. Desperate people are reliable. You won't leave. You won't demand more than the contract allows. And you won't fall in love with me. The last part landed like a slap. I'm not looking for love, Noah said quietly. I'm looking for a way to keep my daughter alive. Good. Elena opened a drawer and pulled out a thick folder. She slid it across the desk toward him. This is the contract. Read it, sign it, or don't. But decide quickly. Mia doesn't have time to waste. Noah picked up the folder with shaking hands. Inside were pages and pages of legal language, terms, conditions, clauses about public behavior, media interactions, grounds for termination. It was a marriage contract that read like a corporate merger. At the bottom of the last page was a line for his signature. He looked up at Elena. If I do this, you'll save her? Yes. You swear? Her eyes didn't waver. I don't make promises I can't keep. Noah stared at the contract. He thought about Mia, her laugh, her tiny hands reaching for him, the way she said "dada" like it was the only word that mattered. He thought about the machines keeping her alive, the monitors tracking every fragile heartbeat. He thought about the fact that he had no other choice. He picked up the pen and signed his life away. The wedding happened 3 days later. It wasn't a ceremony, it was a transaction. They stood in a sterile conference room on the 40th floor of Voss Industries, a lawyer and 2 witnesses present, and signed the marriage certificate like they were closing a real estate deal. Elena wore a white blouse and black slacks. Noah wore the same borrowed jacket. There were no flowers, no vows, no kiss. The lawyer stamped the papers. Congratulations, he said in a tone that suggested he'd done this 100 times and cared exactly 0%. Elena turned to Noah. The media will be informed tonight. By tomorrow morning, you'll be moved into my home. Mia's treatment begins the day after. Okay. She studied him for a moment, and Noah couldn't tell what she was thinking. Her face gave away nothing. This is a business arrangement, Mr. Carter, she said quietly. Don't forget that. I won't. She nodded once, then turned and walked out. Noah stood there, holding a copy of the marriage certificate, certificate, feeling like he'd just sold his soul. But Mia would live, and that was all that mattered. Now, Elena's house wasn't a house. It was a compound. Tucked into the hills outside the city, it sprawled across 5 acres of manicured lawns, marble fountains, and hedges trimmed into geometric perfection. The main building was modern and massive, all glass and steel and sharp angles, and it looked more like a museum than a home. Noah pulled up in his beat-up sedan, Mia asleep in her car seat, and stared at the place like it belonged to another planet. A man in a dark suit approached as Noah climbed out. Mr. Carter, I'm Samuel, the house manager. Miss Voss is waiting inside. Right, thanks. Samuel didn't smile. He just gestured toward the front entrance. Noah unbuckled Mia carefully, lifting her into his arms. She stirred slightly, her head resting against his shoulder, and he pressed a kiss to her hair. We're going to be okay, sweetheart, he whispered. I promise. Inside, the house was even more intimidating. Vaulted ceilings, white walls, furniture that looked like it had been designed by someone who hated comfort. Everything gleamed. Nothing felt lived in. Elena stood near the windows in the main living area, her back to him, phone pressed to her ear. I don't care what the board thinks, she said coolly. The deal closes Friday, or I pull out entirely. A pause. Then make them understand. She ended the call and turned. Her eyes flicked to Mia, still asleep in Noah's arms, and something unreadable crossed her face. She'll stay in the West Wing, Elena said. There's a room prepared, medical equipment, monitoring systems. A nurse will check on her twice a day. Thank you. Elena's gaze lingered on Mia for another moment, then shifted back to Noah. Your room is next to hers. You're free to move about the house, but the East Wing is private. My space. Don't go there. Understood. Dinner's at 7. Don't be late. She walked past him without another word, heels clicking against the marble floor. Noah looked down at Mia and exhaled slowly. Welcome home, I guess, he muttered. Yeah. The first week was surreal. Noah moved through the house like a ghost, trying not to touch anything, trying not to exist too loudly. Mia's treatment began immediately. Doctors came and went, running tests, administering medications, monitoring her progress with the kind of precision that only unlimited money could buy. And she started to improve. Not dramatically, not overnight, but enough that Noah could see it. The color returning to her cheeks, the way she stayed awake a little longer each day, the way her laugh didn't sound so fragile anymore. It was working. Elena, meanwhile, was a stranger. She left early every morning and came home late every night. When she was there, she barely looked at Noah. Their interactions were limited to brief, transactional exchanges. "The press wants a photo of us. Saturday. Be ready." "Fine. There's an investor dinner next week. You'll need a suit. I've arranged for a tailor." "Okay." She didn't ask about Mia. She didn't ask about him. She existed in her own orbit, cold and untouchable, and Noah told himself that was fine. This wasn't real. This was a deal. But then, one night, everything shifted. It was almost midnight. Noah couldn't sleep. He stood in Mia's room, watching her breathe, counting every rise and fall of her chest like a prayer. A sound from the hallway made him turn. Elena stood in the doorway. She was still in her work clothes, blouse slightly untucked, hair loose around her shoulders, and she looked tired. Not just physically, emotionally. Like she'd been holding herself together by sheer will, and the seams were starting to fray. "Is she okay?" Elena asked quietly. "Yeah, just checking on her." Elena stepped inside, her movements careful, almost hesitant. She looked at Mia for a long moment, and Noah saw something flicker in her expression, something that wasn't cold or controlled. "She looks like you," Elena said. Noah blinked. "You think so?" The eyes, the stubborn chin. He smiled faintly. "Yeah, she got that from me." Elena's gaze didn't leave Mia. "You love her." It wasn't a question, but Noah answered anyway. "More than anything." Silence settled between them, heavy but not uncomfortable. Then Elena spoke again, softer this time. "I don't know what that feels like." Noah looked at her, startled. She didn't meet his eyes. She just kept staring at Mia, her expression distant, guarded. "Loving someone more than anything," she continued. I don't think I've ever felt that." Noah didn't know what to say. Elena turned and walked out without another word. But as he stood there in the dark, listening to Mia's breathing and the fading sound of Elena's footsteps, Noah realized something. Beneath all that ice, Elena Voss was just as alone as he was. And maybe, just maybe, this contract had brought together two people who needed saving just as much as Mia did. The change didn't happen all at once. It crept in slowly, like winter thawing into spring, barely noticeable at first, then suddenly everywhere. Noah started to see Elena differently, not as the ice queen from the magazines or the woman who'd bought his compliance with a signature, but as someone who existed in the spaces between her reputation and the truth. She still left early, still came home late, still moved through the house like she was passing through a train station, present but never settling. But now, sometimes she'd pause, in the hallway outside Mia's room, in the kitchen when Noah was making breakfast, in the living room when he sat reading to Mia before bed. She'd stand there, just out of sight, listening, watching. And then she'd leave before he could say anything. It became a pattern, a ritual neither of them acknowledged. One morning, 3 weeks into the arrangement, Noah walked into the kitchen and found Elena already there. She stood at the counter in a silk robe, hair down, no makeup, holding a cup of coffee like she wasn't quite sure what to do with it. She looked different without the armor. Younger, more human, less like a woman who could buy and sell entire companies before lunch. "Morning," Noah said carefully. She glanced at him. "Good morning." He moved to the coffee maker, poured himself a cup, and debated whether to stay or leave. The silence felt fragile, like it might shatter if he breathed too hard. "Mia's doing better," Elena said suddenly. Noah looked at her surprised. "Yeah, she is. The doctors are optimistic." "They are." Elena's fingers tightened slightly around her mug. "That's good." "It is." The conversation died there, awkward and stilted. But Noah noticed something. Elena didn't leave. She stayed, sipping her coffee, staring out the window at the garden that she probably paid someone else to design and maintain. "Do you ever go out there?" Noah asked, nodding toward the lawn. "No." "Why not?" She didn't answer right away. Then quietly, "I don't see the point." Noah frowned. "It's nice, peaceful." "I don't have time for peaceful." "Maybe you should make time." Elena's eyes cut to him, sharp and cool. "Are you giving me life advice, Mr. Carter?" "Just an observation." Her jaw tightened, and for a second Noah thought she'd snap at him, but instead she looked away. "I have a meeting in 40 minutes, she said. "I need to get ready." She walked out, and Noah was left standing there, wondering what the hell had just happened. But the next morning, she was in the kitchen again. And the morning after that, it became routine. They didn't talk much, just small exchanges about the weather, about Mia, about nothing in particular. But they were there in the same space, breathing the same air, and somehow that felt like progress. Then Mia changed everything. It happened on a Saturday. Noah had taken Mia outside for the first time since they'd moved in. The doctors had cleared her for short trips outdoors, and the look on her face when she saw the garden, the flowers, the fountain, the sprawling green lawn, was worth every sleepless night he'd endured. "Dada, look!" She pointed at a butterfly fluttering past, her whole body trembling with excitement. "I see it, sweetheart." She laughed, that bright, uninhibited sound that kids make when the world is still magic and nothing has broken them yet. Noah crouched beside her, holding her hand, letting her pull him toward the flowers. And then he heard footsteps behind him. He turned. Elena stood on the terrace, still in her work clothes, tailored slacks, crisp white blouse, but she wasn't looking at her phone or checking her watch. She was looking at Mia. "Hi," Mia called out, waving with her free hand. Elena froze. Noah could see the hesitation, the uncertainty. Elena didn't know how to respond to a 2-year-old greeting her like they were old friends. "Say hi," Noah prompted gently. Elena's lips parted, then closed. Then, awkwardly, she lifted one hand in a small wave. "Hello?" Mia grinned and started toward her, tugging Noah along. "Wait, Mia!" But she didn't wait. She never did. She marched right up to Elena, stopped in front of her, and held up a dandelion she'd picked from the lawn. "For you." Elena stared at the flower like it was a live grenade. "Mia, maybe Ms. Voss doesn't—" "Take it," Mia insisted, thrusting the dandelion closer. Elena's eyes flicked to Noah, then back to Mia. Slowly, carefully, she reached out and took the flower. "Thank you," she said quietly. Mia beamed. Then, without warning, she wrapped her tiny arms around Elena's leg and hugged her. Elena went completely still. Noah started to intervene, but something stopped him. The look on Elena's face, it wasn't discomfort or irritation. It was something else, something closer to wonder. She stood there frozen, this ruthless billionaire who commanded boardrooms and crushed competitors, utterly undone by a 2-year-old hugging her leg. And then, slowly, Elena's hand moved. She rested it on top of Mia's head just for a second, her fingers barely touching the dark curls. Mia pulled back, still smiling, and ran off to chase another butterfly. Elena stayed where she was, staring down at the dandelion in her hand. Noah walked over. "Sorry, she's enthusiastic." "She's not afraid of me," Elena said softly. "Should she be?" Elena looked up at him, and for the first time since they'd met, her expression was completely unguarded. "Everyone else is." Noah didn't know what to say to that, so he didn't say anything. He just stood there beside her, watching Mia run through the garden and let the silence speak for itself. After a long moment, Elena spoke again. "I don't know how to do this." "Do what?" "This." She gestured vaguely toward Mia, toward the garden, toward the life unfolding around them. "I don't know how to be soft." Noah considered that. You don't have to be soft, you just have to be present. Elena's gaze stayed on Mia. "I've spent my entire life avoiding that." "Why?" She didn't answer. She just turned and walked back into the house, still holding the dandelion, but Noah noticed something. She didn't throw it away. The next day he found it pressed between the pages of a book on her desk. Things shifted after that. Elena started coming home earlier. Not every night, but enough that Noah noticed. She'd walk through the door at 7 instead of 10, still carrying her briefcase, still wearing her armor, but she'd pause in the hallway and listen. If Mia was awake, she'd hear her laughing or babbling or singing off key. And sometimes, not always, but sometimes, Elena would walk into the room. She didn't know what to do once she got there. She'd stand near the doorway, hands in her pockets, watching like she was observing a species she didn't quite understand. But Mia didn't care. Mia treated Elena like she treated everyone, with open, unfiltered affection. She'd run up to her, show her toys, demand that Elena sit on the floor and play. And Elena, awkward and uncertain, would comply. Noah watched it happen in real time. The slow, painful thaw of a woman who'd spent 30 years convincing herself she didn't need anyone. One evening, Noah walked into the living room and found Elena sitting on the floor, legs crossed, while Mia stacked blocks in front of her. "This one," Mia said, holding up a red block. Elena took it. "Where does it go?" "On top." Elena placed it carefully on the tower. It wobbled, but didn't fall. Mia clapped. "Good job." Elena's lips twitched. Not quite a smile, but close. Noah leaned against the doorway, arms crossed, trying not to grin. Elena glanced up and saw him watching. Her expression shifted, defensive. "She asked me to help." "I didn't say anything." "You're smirking." "I'm not smirking." "You are." Mia grabbed another block and shoved it into Elena's hand. "More." Elena turned her attention back to the tower, and Noah stayed where he was, watching the two of them build something fragile and unstable and absolutely perfect. Later that night, after Mia was asleep, Noah found Elena in the kitchen again. She stood at the counter, scrolling through her phone, a glass of wine untouched beside her. "You're good with her," Noah said. Elena didn't look up. "I don't know what I'm doing." "Neither do I, most of the time." That got her attention. She glanced at him, skeptical. "You're her father." "Yeah, and I'm making it up as I go." Noah poured himself a glass of water and sat down at the island. "There's no manual for this stuff. You just try, and mess up, and try again." Elena set her phone down. "I don't mess up. Everyone messes up. Not me." Noah raised an eyebrow. "Never?" "Not in ways that matter." "That sounds exhausting." She stared at him, and he could see the wheels turning, like she was trying to decide if he was mocking her or being genuine. "It is," she said finally. The admission hung in the air between them, raw and unexpected. "You don't have to be perfect around her," Noah said quietly. "She doesn't need perfect. She just needs you to show up." Elena's fingers tightened around her wine glass. "What if I can't?" "You already are." She looked at him like she didn't believe him, but she didn't argue. They sat in silence for a while, and Noah noticed something. The tension in Elena's shoulders had eased, just slightly. She looked less like a woman bracing for impact and more like someone who was, for once, allowing herself to just exist. "Thank you," she said suddenly. Noah blinked. "For what?" "For not treating me like I'm made of glass." He smiled faintly. "You're not made of glass. You're made of steel." "Is that a compliment?" "It's an observation." Elena almost smiled. Almost. Then her phone buzzed, and the moment broke. She picked it up, read the message, and her expression shifted back into something hard and controlled. "I have to take this," she said, standing. "Yeah, of course." She walked out, and Noah was left alone in the kitchen, wondering how long it would take before she let herself stay. The weeks blurred together. Mia's health continued to improve. The color in her cheeks deepened, her energy returned, and the doctor started using words like remission and stabilized. Noah cried the first time he heard it. He locked himself in the bathroom and sobbed into a towel, relief and terror and gratitude all crashing into him at once. Elena found him afterward. He'd forgotten to lock the bedroom door, and she walked in without knocking. She stopped when she saw him sitting on the edge of the bed, face in his hands, shoulders shaking. "Noah?" He looked up, eyes red, and tried to pull himself together. "Sorry, I'm fine." "You're not fine." "I am. His voice cracked. "She's going to be okay." Elena didn't move. She just stood there, watching him, and Noah could see her struggling with what to do. Then slowly she crossed the room and sat down beside him. Not touching, not speaking, just there. And somehow, that was enough. They sat in silence side by side until Noah's breathing steadied and the world stopped spinning. "Thank you," he said quietly. "For what?" "For this. For all of it." Elena stared at her hands, folded in her lap. "I didn't do it for you. I know. I did it because it made sense, strategically. I know. It was a transaction. I know." She looked at him then, and Noah saw something flicker in her eyes, doubt, maybe, or confusion, like she was trying to convince herself of something she no longer believed. "Was it?" she asked softly. Noah didn't answer. He didn't know how. The silence stretched, heavy and complicated, and then Elena stood. "Get some rest," she said. "You look like hell." "Thanks." She walked to the door, paused and glanced back. "She's lucky to have you." Before Noah could respond, she was gone, but the words stayed with him, echoing in the quiet, and he realized something. Elena wasn't just thawing, she was starting to care, and that terrified both of them. The breaking point came 2 weeks later. Elena had been working non-stop, conference calls, investor meetings, late nights in her office. Noah barely saw her. When he did, she looked pale, drawn, like she was running on fumes and sheer willpower. "You should take a break," he said one night when she stumbled into the kitchen at midnight. "I'm fine." "You look like you're about to collapse." "I said I'm fine." She poured herself a glass of water, drank half of it, and gripped the counter like it was the only thing holding her upright. Noah stood. "Elena, I don't need you to take care of me," she snapped. "I'm not trying to take care of you. I'm trying to—" "What? Be my friend? My husband?" She laughed bitterly. "This isn't real, Noah. Don't forget that." The words hit harder than they should have. Noah stared at her, jaw tight. "I haven't forgotten." "Good." She turned to leave, but her legs gave out. Noah caught her before she hit the floor, arms wrapping around her waist, pulling her upright. She was lighter than he expected, fragile in a way that didn't match the woman he'd come to know. "Let go," she said weakly. "Not a chance." He guided her to a chair, forced her to sit, and crouched in front of her. Her face was ashen, her breathing shallow. "When's the last time you ate?" he asked. "I don't remember." "When's the last time you slept?" "I don't know." "Elena, I'm fine." "You're not fine. You're running yourself into the ground." She looked at him, and for the first time he saw fear in her eyes. "If I stop," she whispered, "it all falls apart." Noah's chest tightened. "What falls apart?" "Everything. The company, the deals, my reputation, everything I've built." Her voice cracked. "If I stop, I'm nothing." "That's not true." "You don't know that." "I do." He reached out, hesitated, then took her hand. "You're not nothing, Elena. You're—" He trailed off, searching for the right words. "You're more than what you've built. You're more than your work." Her eyes filled with tears, and she looked away, ashamed. "I don't know how to be anything else." Noah's throat ached. He wanted to say something profound, something that would fix this, but he didn't have the words. So he did the only thing he could think of. He stayed. He pulled a chair over, sat beside her, and didn't let go of her hand. And Elena, exhausted and brittle and terrified, let him. They sat like that for a long time, neither of them speaking until her breathing evened out and the trembling stopped. "I'm sorry," she said finally. "For what?" "For snapping at you. You're allowed to snap." "I'm not allowed to fall apart." "Everyone falls apart sometimes." She looked at him, really looked at him, and Noah saw something shift in her expression. "You don't." He laughed quietly. "I've fallen apart more times than I can count. You just haven't seen it." "Why not?" "Because I'm good at hiding it." Elena's gaze held his, and for a moment the walls between them crumbled completely. "I don't want to hide anymore," she whispered. Noah's heart kicked against his ribs. "Then don't." Her hand tightened around his, and they sat there in the dim kitchen, two broken people holding on to each other like they were the only solid thing left in the world. And maybe, just maybe, they were. The next morning, Elena didn't go to work. She stayed home. She had breakfast with Noah and Mia. She sat in the garden and let the sun hit her face. She didn't check her phone every 5 minutes. She didn't answer emails. She just existed. Mia dragged her outside to play, and Elena, still awkward and uncertain, followed. Noah watched from the terrace as his daughter handed Elena a toy shovel and pointed at the dirt. Dig! Elena stared at the shovel like it was a foreign object. I don't know how to dig. Like this, Mia demonstrated, scooping up dirt and dumping it into a plastic bucket. Elena crouched down, mimicking the motion. It was clumsy and inefficient, but Mia clapped anyway. Good job. Elena's lips curved into something that almost resembled a smile. Noah walked over, hands in his pockets. You're a natural. I'm covered in dirt. Yeah, it's a good look on you. She glanced up at him, and this time she did smile. Small, hesitant, but real. And Noah felt something shift inside him, something dangerous and terrifying and completely out of his control. He was starting to care about her, not as the woman who'd saved his daughter, not as the stranger he'd married for survival, but as Elena. Just Elena. And he had no idea what to do about it. That night, something in the house felt different. Noah couldn't name it. The air was the same, the furniture hadn't moved, the lights still glowed with that expensive ambient warmth that money could buy. But there was a shift, something subtle and undeniable, like the moment before a storm when the wind changes direction and you know everything's about to break open. He found Elena in her office. She sat behind her desk, staring at her laptop screen, but her fingers weren't moving. She just sat there, motionless, bathed in the blue glow of the monitor. Noah knocked on the doorframe. She looked up, startled, like she'd forgotten other people existed. Sorry, he said. Didn't mean to interrupt. You're not. She closed the laptop. I wasn't working anyway. That's a first. She almost smiled. Don't get used to it. Noah stepped inside, hands in his pockets. The office was exactly what he'd expected. Sleek, modern, intimidating. Everything had its place. Nothing was out of order. It looked like a room designed by someone who couldn't afford chaos. Mia's asleep, he said. Good. She asked about you before bed. Elena's expression flickered. What did she say? She wanted to know if you'd read to her tomorrow night. Elena looked away. I don't know any children's stories. You don't have to. Just pick a book and read it. It's not that simple. It is, actually. She shook her head, but there was no sharpness in it, just exhaustion. You make everything sound easy. I don't mean to. I know. She rubbed her temples, eyes closing. I'm just tired. Noah moved closer. When's the last time you took a real break? Define real. More than 5 minutes. More than one afternoon in the garden. She didn't answer. Elena. I don't know, Noah. Years, maybe? I don't keep track. He sat down in the chair across from her desk, studying her. She looked smaller somehow, like the weight of her empire was pressing down on her shoulders, and she'd finally stopped pretending she could carry it alone. You don't have to do this by yourself, he said quietly. Yes, I do. Why? Because no one else will. That's not true, isn't it? She opened her eyes, and there was something raw in her gaze. Everyone I've ever trusted has either left or tried to take something from me. My father sold half my company out from under me before I was old enough to stop him. My business partners tried to force me out the second I showed weakness. Even the people I thought were friends. She stopped, jaw tightening. They all wanted something. Noah's chest ached. Not everyone's like that. You say that because you're not. Maybe there are more people like me than you think. Elena laughed bitterly. You're here because I'm paying you to be. The words landed like a slap. Noah stared at her, and for a second he didn't know what to say. Because she was right. Technically, the contract was still there. The arrangement was still in place. On paper, this was a transaction, but it didn't feel like one anymore. Is that really what you think? He asked. Elena's expression wavered. I don't know what I think. Well, I do. Noah leaned forward, elbows on his knees. I'm here because my daughter's alive because of you. Yeah, we signed a contract. Yeah, there's money involved. But that's not why I'm sitting in your office at 10 o'clock at night talking to you. Then why are you? Because I give a damn. The silence that followed was heavy and uncomfortable and honest. Elena looked at him like she was trying to decide if he was lying. like she'd spent so long assuming the worst of people that kindness felt like a trick. "I don't know how to do this," she said finally. "Do what?" "Let someone in." Noah's throat tightened. "You don't have to know how. You just have to try." She held his gaze for a long moment, and then slowly she nodded. It wasn't much, but it was something. The next evening, Elena kept her promise. She came home at 6, walked straight to Mia's room, and knocked on the doorframe like she was entering a boardroom. Mia looked up from her pile of stuffed animals and grinned. "Elena." "Hi." Elena stepped inside, awkward and stiff. "Your father said you wanted me to read to you." "Yes." Mia scrambled over to her bookshelf and pulled out a battered copy of a picture book about a bear who couldn't sleep. She shoved it into Elena's hands. "This one." Elena stared at the book like it was written in a foreign language. Noah, who'd been folding laundry nearby, bit back a smile. "You just open it and read the words." "I know how to read." "Then you're already halfway there." Elena shot him a look, but there was no real heat in it. She sat down on the edge of Mia's bed, opened the book, and started reading. Her voice was stilted at first, too formal, like she was delivering a quarterly earnings report. But Mia didn't care. She curled up beside Elena, resting her head against her arm, completely content. And slowly, Elena's voice softened. By the time she reached the end of the story, she wasn't reading like a CEO anymore. She was reading like someone who cared about the words, about the person listening, about the moment. When she finished, Mia yawned and smiled up at her. "Again." Elena blinked. "Again?" "Kids always want it again," Noah said from the doorway. Elena looked at Mia, who was giving her the kind of hopeful, pleading expression that only toddlers could pull off, and sighed. "Fine, one more time." Mia cheered softly, and Elena started over. Noah watched from the hallway, arms crossed, heart doing something complicated in his chest. He'd seen Elena command rooms full of executives. He'd seen her negotiate million-dollar deals without flinching. But this, watching her read a children's book to his daughter with painstaking care, was the most remarkable thing he'd ever seen her do. When Mia finally fell asleep, Elena carefully closed the book and stood. She looked down at Mia for a long moment, something unreadable flickering across her face. Then she walked past Noah without a word. He followed her into the hallway. "Thank you," he said. She asked. I said yes. "Still, thank you." Elena stopped, her back to him. "She's easy to care about. So are you." She turned, and the look on her face made Noah's breath catch. "Don't," she said quietly. "Don't what?" "Don't make this into something it's not." "What do you think this is?" "A contract, an arrangement." "Is that really all it is?" Elena's jaw tightened. "It has to be." "Why?" "Because if it's not, then I don't know what happens next, and I can't afford not to know." Noah took a step closer. "Maybe not knowing is okay." "Not for me." "Why not?" "Because I've spent my entire life building walls, Noah. I don't know how to live without them." "Then let me help you tear them down." Elena stared at him, and for a second, he thought she might say yes. He thought she might take that leap, let herself fall, trust that he'd catch her. But then she shook her head. "I can't." She walked away, leaving Noah standing alone in the hallway, wondering if he'd just pushed too hard or not hard enough. The days after that were strange. Elena didn't pull away completely, but she was more guarded. She still came home for dinner, still read to Mia at bedtime. But the softness that had started to emerge, the version of her that smiled at dandelions and dug in the dirt, retreated behind the armor again. Noah didn't push. He just stayed close, steady, waiting for her to find her way back. Then, one night, everything broke wide open. It started with a phone call. Noah was in the kitchen cleaning up after dinner when he heard Elena's voice rise from her office. Not loud, but sharp. Sharp enough to cut through walls. "That's not what we agreed on." A pause. "I don't care what the board thinks. The deal stays as is, or I walk." Another pause, longer this time. "Then let them try." The call ended with a slam, and silence followed. Noah dried his hands and walked to her office. The door was half open, and he could see Elena standing at the window, arms wrapped around herself, staring out at the dark lawn. "You okay?" he asked. She didn't turn. I'm fine. You don't sound fine. I said I'm fine. Noah stepped inside. What happened? Nothing I can't handle. Elena? Drop it, Noah. He didn't. He crossed the room and stood beside her, close enough to see the tension in her shoulders, the way her hands were clenched into fists. Talk to me, he said quietly. There's nothing to talk about. Bullshit. She turned, eyes flashing. Excuse me? You heard me. This isn't nothing. You're pissed and you're scared and you're pretending you're not. So talk to me. Why? So you can tell me it's going to be okay? So you can fix it? No, so you're not alone. The words hung between them, raw and honest, and Elena's expression crumbled. They're trying to force me out, she said, voice shaking. The board. They think I'm losing control. They think the company would be better off without me. Noah's stomach dropped. Can they do that? If they get enough votes, yes. Why now? Because I've been distracted. She laughed bitterly. Because I've been coming home early. Because I've been spending time with... She stopped, shaking her head. It doesn't matter. The point is, they see weakness, and they're moving in for the kill. You're not weak. I am. I let my guard down, and this is what happens. No. You started living like a human being instead of a machine. That's not weakness. That's courage. Elena's eyes filled with tears. It's going to cost me everything. Not if you fight back. I'm tired of fighting. Then let me fight with you. She stared at him, and Noah saw it, the exact moment she stopped trying to hold it together. The tears spilled over, and she covered her face with her hands, shoulders shaking. Noah didn't think. He just pulled her into his arms. She resisted at first, stiff and unyielding, but then she broke. She pressed her face into his chest and sobbed, deep, wrenching sobs that sounded like they'd been trapped inside her for years. And Noah held her. He didn't say anything, didn't try to fix it. He just held her and let her fall apart. When the tears finally slowed, Elena pulled back, wiping her eyes, looking embarrassed and exhausted. Sorry, she whispered. Don't be. I don't cry. You just did, she laughed weakly. I don't know what's happening to me. You're letting yourself feel things. That's not a bad thing. It feels like it. Noah reached out and gently wiped a tear from her cheek. You're going to be okay. You don't know that. I do. She looked at him, and something shifted in her expression, something soft and vulnerable and terrifying. Why do you care so much? She asked. Noah's heart kicked against his ribs. Because you're not just some contract to me anymore. Then what am I? He hesitated, the words catching in his throat, but he couldn't stop them. You're someone I'm starting to fall for. Elena's breath hitched. The silence that followed was deafening. Then, slowly, she reached up and touched his face, her fingers trembling. Noah, I know this wasn't supposed to happen, but it did. I can't. You don't have to say anything. I just needed you to know. She stared at him, eyes wide, searching his face like she was looking for a lie and finding only truth. And then she kissed him. It wasn't planned, it wasn't smooth, it was desperate and messy and fueled by months of tension and fear and longing. Noah froze for half a second, shocked, and then he kissed her back. His hands found her waist, pulling her closer, and she made a sound low in her throat, something between a sigh and a sob. Her fingers tangled in his hair, and the kiss deepened, all the walls between them crashing down in one reckless, beautiful moment. When they finally pulled apart, both of them were breathing hard. Elena looked at him, eyes wide, like she couldn't believe what had just happened. She stepped back, shaking her head. I shouldn't have done that. Why not? Because this isn't real, Noah. This was never supposed to be real. It feels pretty real to me. That's the problem. Her voice cracked. I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to let someone in without losing everything. You won't lose me. You can't promise that. I can, and I am. Elena's eyes filled with tears again, and she looked away. I'm terrified. So am I. She looked back at him, surprised. I'm terrified, Noah repeated. I'm terrified of screwing this up. I'm terrified of not being enough. but I'm more terrified of walking away and wondering what could have been. Elena's hands were shaking. What if we destroy each other? What if we don't? She stared at him, and Noah could see the war happening inside her, the instinct to run battling against the desperate need to stay. And then, slowly, she reached for his hand. I don't know how to do this, she whispered. Neither do I. Then we'll figure it out together. Noah squeezed her hand. Together. They stood there in the dim light of her office, holding on to each other like they were the only solid thing in a world that was spinning out of control. And for the first time in either of their lives, they weren't alone. The next morning, everything felt different. Noah woke up early, made coffee, and found Elena already in the kitchen. She was dressed for work, hair pulled back, armor firmly in place. But when she saw him, something in her expression softened. Morning, she said. Morning. They stood there for a moment, the memory of the kiss hanging between them like a question neither of them knew how to answer. About last night, Elena started. We don't have to talk about it if you don't want to. I do. I don't know where to start. Noah poured 2 cups of coffee and handed her one. How about we start with breakfast? She smiled faintly. That's your solution? Breakfast? It's a start. They sat at the island side by side, drinking coffee in companionable silence. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't a grand declaration or a sweeping romantic gesture, but it was real. And that was enough. Later that day, Elena went to war. She walked into her boardroom with her head high and her spine straight, and she faced the people trying to take her company away from her. Noah didn't know the details. He wasn't there. But when she came home that night, she looked different. Not defeated, not broken. Stronger. She found him in Mia's room, reading a bedtime story, and leaned against the doorframe, watching. When the story ended and Mia drifted off to sleep, Noah stood and walked over to her. How'd it go? He asked quietly. I won. Yeah? They tried to vote me out. I reminded them why that was a terrible idea. She smiled, small but genuine. They backed down. I'm proud of you. Elena's eyes softened. Thank you. For what? For believing I could do it. Noah reached out and took her hand. I always believed in you. She looked down at their joined hands, then back up at him. I think I'm falling for you too, she whispered. Noah's heart stopped, then started again faster and harder than before. Yeah? Yeah. He pulled her into his arms, and she came willingly. No hesitation, no walls. Just her. Just them. And as they stood there in the quiet hallway, holding each other like they'd found something worth fighting for, Noah realized something. This wasn't a contract anymore. This was love. Messy, imperfect, terrifying, beautiful love. And neither of them was running. For 3 weeks, they lived in a fragile kind of peace. It wasn't perfect. Nothing about their situation was. But there were mornings when Noah woke up and found Elena already in the kitchen, making coffee badly, cursing under her breath when it came out too weak or too bitter. There were evenings when she came home early and played with Mia on the living room floor, building block towers that always collapsed, but somehow never stopped being fun. There were nights when they sat together after Mia fell asleep, talking about nothing and everything, learning each other in ways the contract had never anticipated. They didn't talk about what they were. They didn't define it. They just existed in it, day by day, moment by moment, like 2 people walking a tightrope who knew that looking down would mean falling. But the world outside their little bubble didn't care about fragile peace. It came for them anyway. Noah was in the garden with Mia when his phone rang. He almost didn't answer, unknown number, probably spam, but something made him swipe to accept. Hello? Mr. Carter? A woman's voice, professional and clipped. This is Jennifer Marsh from the Daily Observer. I'm calling to confirm a story we're running tomorrow about you and Elena Voss. Noah's stomach dropped. What story? About your marriage. Specifically, the nature of it. His grip tightened on the phone. I don't know what you're talking about. We have documents, Mr. Carter, contracts, financial records, evidence that your marriage to Miss Voss is a business arrangement, not a legitimate relationship. She paused. Would you like to comment before we go to print? Noah's mind raced. Where did you get those documents? I can't reveal my sources. This is private information. You can't. Actually, we can. And we will. The story runs tomorrow morning. I'm giving you the courtesy of a response. No comment, Noah said, and hung up. His hands were shaking. He stood there in the garden, Mia playing at his feet, the sun shining down like nothing was wrong, and felt the world start to crack apart. He found Elena in her office an hour later. She was on a call, pacing behind her desk, gesturing sharply as she spoke. When she saw Noah's face, she stopped mid-sentence. I'll call you back, she said, and ended the call. What's wrong? We have a problem. He told her everything. The call, the reporter, the documents, the story running tomorrow. Elena's face went pale, then hard. How did they get the contract? I don't know. Someone leaked it. Someone on my legal team, or... She stopped, jaw clenching. It doesn't matter. What matters is damage control. Elena, they're going to destroy you. They're going to try. She grabbed her phone. I'll call my PR team. We'll issue a statement, threaten legal action. That's not going to stop this. Then what do you suggest? Noah ran a hand through his hair, frustration boiling over. I don't know, but denying it won't work. They have proof. Then we confirm it and control the narrative. How? Elena paced, thinking fast. We say it started as a contract, yes, but we fell in love. We say the marriage was unconventional, but it became real. Will anyone believe that? They don't have to believe it. They just have to not care enough to keep digging. Noah stared at her. You really think that'll work? I think it's the best option we have. And if it doesn't? Elena stopped pacing. She looked at him, and for the first time since he'd walked into her office, he saw fear. Then I lose everything, she said quietly. Noah crossed the room and took her hands. Not everything. My company, my reputation, everything I've built. You'll still have me. You'll still have Mia. Elena's eyes filled with tears. That's not enough. The words hit like a punch. Noah let go of her hand, stepping back. What? I didn't mean it like that. Then how did you mean it? I mean, I can't lose my company, Noah. I can't. It's who I am. It's all I've ever had. You have more than that now. Do I? Her voice cracked. Or is that just another thing they'll take away when this all falls apart? Noah stared at her, chest tight, trying to understand what was happening. You think I'm going to leave? I think everyone leaves. I'm not everyone. You say that now. I mean it. So did everyone else. The silence between them was sharp and jagged, full of all the things they'd been avoiding since the night they kissed. I can't do this right now, Elena said finally. I have to fix this. I have to... She grabbed her phone again, fingers flying across the screen. I need to make calls. I need to... Elena, I need to handle this, Noah. We need to handle this together. I can't... Her voice broke, and she pressed her palms against her eyes. I don't know how to do this. Do what? Rely on someone. Trust someone. Let someone help me without expecting it to blow up in my face. Noah's heart ached. I'm not going to blow up in your face. You don't know that. I do. Stop saying that. She dropped her hands and her eyes were wild. Stop acting like you can promise me things you can't control. You don't know what tomorrow looks like. You don't know if you'll still want this when the world tears us apart. I do know. Because I'm not in this for your company or your money or whatever the hell the world thinks. I'm in this for you. Elena shook her head, tears streaming down her face. Then you're an idiot. Noah almost laughed. Yeah, probably. She stared at him, and then, despite everything, she smiled. Just barely. Just enough. I'm sorry, she whispered. For what? For being terrified. I'm terrified too. Then why aren't you running? Because I've already lost everything once. I know what it feels like. And I know that losing you would be worse. Elena's breath hitched, and she crossed the distance between them in 2 steps, wrapping her arms around him like he was the only thing keeping her from falling apart. And maybe he was. They stood there holding each other in the wreckage of their carefully built world, and Noah realized something. This was the fight, not the boardroom, not the press, not the people trying to tear them down. This. Choosing each other when it would be easier to run. Staying when leaving made more sense, trusting when trust felt impossible. That was the real fight, and they were going to have to decide if they were strong enough to win it. The story broke the next morning. Noah saw it on his phone before he even got out of bed. The headline was everywhere, splashed across news sites and social media, dissected by people who didn't know them and didn't care. Billionaire Elena Voss's marriage exposed as business deal. Husband, paid to play the role. Underneath was a photo of them at a charity gala from 2 weeks ago, smiling for the cameras, looking like the perfect couple. The irony wasn't lost on him. He read the article. It was brutal, detailed, accurate in all the worst ways. The contract, the money, the arrangement, everything laid bare for the world to see. And the comments, thousands of them already, were worse. She bought herself a husband. Pathetic. He's just a gold digger. Disgusting. This is what happens when you let women run companies. They lose their minds. Noah's jaw clenched, and he closed the app before he threw his phone across the room. Elena was already gone. She'd left before dawn, probably to deal with the fallout. Noah didn't blame her. He got Mia up, fed her breakfast, tried to act like the world wasn't imploding around them. She was too young to understand, and he was grateful for that. She just ate her cereal and babbled about cartoons and asked when Elena would be home. "I don't know, sweetheart," Noah said quietly. By noon, the press was camped outside the gates, vans with satellite dishes, cameras with long lenses, reporters shouting questions at anyone who came or went. Security kept them off the property, but they were there, waiting, circling like vultures. Noah stayed inside with Mia, curtains drawn, trying to ignore the noise. Elena didn't come home that night, or the next. She texted brief, clipped messages that said she was handling things, staying at the office, meeting with lawyers and PR teams. She didn't call. She didn't ask how he was. She didn't ask about Mia. And Noah felt the distance growing between them like a physical thing, stretching wider with every hour she stayed away. On the third day, he called her. She answered on the fifth ring. "Noah, I'm in the middle of—" "I don't care. Come home." A pause. "I can't." "Yes, you can. There's too much to deal with. The board is in chaos. Investors are pulling out. The media won't stop." "Elena, come home." "I can't just leave. Mia misses you. I miss you." Silence. Then quietly, "I miss you too." "Then come home." "It's not that simple." "It is." "No, Noah, it's not." Her voice was strained, exhausted. "If I come home, I'm admitting defeat. I'm letting them win. I have to stay here and fight." "You can fight from here." "No, I can't. Because every time I'm there, I remember what it feels like to not be alone. And that makes me weak." Noah's chest tightened. "That's not weakness." "It is in my world." "Then maybe your world is wrong." "Maybe it is. But it's the only one I have." He closed his eyes, trying to keep his voice steady. "What are we doing, Elena?" "I don't know." "Do you still want this?" "I don't know." "You don't know if you want me?" "I don't know if I can afford to." The words cut deeper than anything she'd said before. "Okay," Noah said quietly. "Noah?" "No, it's fine. I get it. You have to do what you have to do." "That's not what I have to go. Mia needs me." He hung up before she could respond. For a long time, he just sat there, phone in his hand, staring at nothing. He'd known this could happen. He'd known the world would come for them eventually, but he'd thought they were strong enough to survive it. Maybe he'd been wrong. That night, Noah couldn't sleep. He paced the house, restless and angry, and hurting in ways he didn't know how to fix. He ended up in Elena's office, staring at the shelves lined with awards and framed magazine covers and all the proof of everything she'd built. And he understood. He understood why she couldn't let it go, why she'd fight to the death to keep it. Because this was her identity, her worth, the only thing she'd ever been able to count on. But it still hurt. He was about to leave when he saw it, a frame on her desk, turned face down. He picked it up. It was a photo. Not a professional one, just a candid shot, slightly blurry, taken on someone's phone. Elena, Noah, and Mia in the garden. Mia was laughing, holding a flower. Noah was crouched beside her, smiling. And Elena Elena was looking at them like they were the most important thing in the world. Noah's throat ached. She'd kept it. She'd printed it, framed it, kept it on her desk where she could see it every day. She cared. She was just too scared to admit it. The next morning, the scandal got worse. A rival company made a hostile takeover bid. Investors who'd stayed loyal started jumping ship. The board called an emergency meeting, and the press painted Elena as a fraud, a manipulator, a woman who'd lied to the world. Noah watched it all unfold on the news, helpless and furious. And then his phone rang. It was Dr. Patel. "Mr. Carter, I need you to bring Mia in. Immediately." His blood turned to ice. "What's wrong?" "Her levels are off. It could be nothing, but I need to run tests. I'm on my way." He grabbed Mia, threw her in the car, and drove faster than he should have, hands white-knuckled on the wheel, heart hammering in his chest. The hospital was chaos. They took Mia back right away, hooking her up to machines, drawing blood, running scans. Noah sat in the waiting room, leg bouncing, head in his hands, praying to anyone who might be listening. He called Elena. No answer. He called again. Voicemail. He texted. "Mia's in the hospital. Please." No response. An hour passed. 2. Dr. Patel came out, and Noah shot to his feet. "She's stable," the doctor said. "It was a minor setback. We're adjusting her medication. She'll be fine." Noah nearly collapsed with relief, but the fear didn't leave. Because for a moment, just a moment, he thought he was going to lose her. Again. And Elena hadn't been there. He sat beside Mia's bed, holding her hand, watching her sleep, and felt something inside him break. This was supposed to be their life, the three of them, together. But Elena was gone, and he didn't know if she was coming back. It was almost midnight when Elena finally walked through the hospital room door. She looked like hell. Her hair was disheveled, her makeup smudged, her clothes wrinkled. She'd clearly run from wherever she'd been, and she stood in the doorway, breathing hard, eyes locked on Mia. "Is she—" "She's fine," Noah said quietly. Elena's shoulders sagged with relief. She crossed the room and sank into the chair beside the bed, reaching out to touch Mia's hand. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I'm so sorry. I didn't see your calls. I was in a meeting and my phone was off, and—" Her voice broke. "I should have been here." "Yeah, you should have." Elena flinched. Noah stood, too tired and too angry to soften the words. "I called you, I texted you, I needed you, and you weren't there." "I know." "Mia needed you." "I know. And you still chose your company over us." Elena's eyes filled with tears. "That's not fair." "Isn't it? I was trying to save everything." "You can't save everything, Elena. Sometimes you have to choose." "I did choose. I chose to fight for what I've built. And where does that leave us?" She looked at him, and the pain in her eyes was so raw it made Noah's chest ache. "I don't know," she whispered. Noah nodded slowly. "Then I think we have our answer." "Noah, I can't keep doing this. I can't keep waiting for you to decide if we're worth it. You are worth it. Then prove it." Elena stared at him, tears streaming down her face, and for a moment Noah thought she'd say something, anything, that would fix this. But she didn't. She just looked at Mia, then back at him, and shook her head. "I can't." Noah felt something inside him shatter. "Okay," he said. "Then I'm done." "Noah, please." "I'm done, Elena. I'm done fighting for someone who won't fight for me." He walked out of the room, leaving her there with Mia, and didn't look back. Because if he did, he'd break. And he'd already been broken enough. Noah spent that night in a hotel room 3 blocks from the hospital. He couldn't go back to Elena's house. Not yet. Maybe not ever. The thought of walking through those halls, seeing Mia's room, the kitchen where they'd shared coffee, the office where Elena had kissed him, it was too much. So he stayed in a generic room with beige walls and scratchy sheets, staring at the ceiling, replaying every word they'd said to each other until the sun came up. He'd meant what he said. He was done. But that didn't make it hurt any less. When morning came, he checked out, picked Mia up from the hospital, and drove aimlessly for an hour before finally pulling into the parking lot of a playground he used to take her to before everything changed, before the contract, before Elena, before he dared to believe that maybe, just maybe, he could have something more than survival. Mia ran toward the swings, and Noah sat on a bench watching her play, trying to figure out what the hell came next. His phone buzzed. A text from Elena. "We need to talk." He stared at the screen for a long time, then put the phone face down on the bench. He didn't have anything left to say. Elena sat in her boardroom, surrounded by lawyers and executives and people who were supposed to be on her side, and felt completely alone. They were talking. Strategy, damage control, legal options. But their voices sounded distant, like she was underwater and they were somewhere far above her, unreachable. She'd won the vote. Barely. The hostile takeover had been blocked. Her position as CEO was secure. She should have felt victorious. Instead, she felt empty. Because Noah was right. She'd chosen the company over him, over Mia, over everything that had started to matter more than the empire she'd built. And now they were gone. Someone said her name. "Ms. Voss?" She looked up. Her head of legal was staring at her, waiting for an answer to a question she hadn't heard. "I'm sorry, what?" "I asked if you wanted to move forward with the defamation suit against the Daily Observer." Elena opened her mouth to say yes, to unleash her lawyers on everyone who dared to expose her, to fight back the way she always had, ruthlessly, without mercy, without looking back. But the word wouldn't come. Because what was the point? She could destroy the newspaper. She could discredit the reporter. She could spin the narrative until people forgot or stopped caring. But it wouldn't change the truth. She had entered into a contract marriage. She had paid Noah to play a role. And somewhere along the way, it had stopped being a transaction and started being real. At least for her. But she'd been too afraid to admit it. And now she'd lost the one thing she hadn't known she needed until it was gone. "Ms. Voss?" Elena stood abruptly. "Cancel the suit." The room went silent. "What?" her lawyer said. "Cancel it. All of it. But the damage to your reputation is already done. Suing them won't fix it. It'll just drag this out longer." She looked around the table at the faces staring at her like she'd lost her mind. "I'm done fighting battles that don't matter." "This matters," someone said. "No," Elena said quietly. "It doesn't." She walked out of the boardroom, ignoring the voices calling after her, and didn't stop until she reached her office. She closed the door, leaned against it, and let herself feel everything she'd been pushing down for days. The fear, the regret, the overwhelming, crushing realization that she'd spent 30 years building walls to protect herself from pain, and all she'd done was lock herself in a prison of her own making. She pulled out her phone and called Noah. It rang and and rang, then went to voicemail. She tried again, same result. She texted, "Please, I need to talk to you." No response. Elena sank into her chair, staring at her phone, and felt the weight of every choice she'd ever made pressing down on her. She'd fought so hard to keep everything, and lost the only things that mattered. 3 days passed. Noah moved them into a small apartment on the other side of the city. It wasn't much, 2 bedrooms, outdated appliances, a landlord who didn't ask questions, but it was theirs. No contracts, no conditions, just him and Mia figuring it out one day at a time. Mia adjusted quickly. Kids always did. She missed the big house, the garden, the fancy toys, but as long as Noah was there, she was okay. Noah, on the other hand, was not okay. He went through the motions, made breakfast, took Mia to her medical appointments, read to her at bedtime. But there was a heaviness in his chest that wouldn't lift, a constant ache that reminded him of everything he'd walked away from. He told himself it was the right choice. He told himself Elena had made her decision, and he had to respect it. But late at night, when Mia was asleep and the apartment was too quiet, he found himself thinking about her, wondering if she was okay, wondering if she was thinking about him too. His phone never rang, and he told himself that was his answer. On the 4th day, Elena did something she hadn't done in over a decade. She went to see her father. Richard Voss lived in a penthouse across town, surrounded by expensive art and expensive furniture and all the trappings of a man who'd built an empire and then sold half of it out from under his daughter to fund his retirement. Elena hated coming here, but she didn't know where else to go. He opened the door with a raised eyebrow. "Elena, this is unexpected. Can I come in?" He stepped aside and she walked into the pristine living room that felt more like a museum than a home. "Drink?" he offered. "No, thank you." They sat across from each other, and for a moment neither of them spoke. I assume you're here about the scandal, Richard said finally. I'm here because I don't know what to do. He looked surprised. Elena never admitted uncertainty. Not to him, not to anyone. That's not like you, he said. I know. He leaned back in his chair, studying her. What happened? I fell in love with someone, and I ruined it. Richard's expression didn't change. The husband. Yes. Was it real? Elena hesitated. It started as a contract, but yes, it became real. And now? Now he's gone, because I couldn't choose him over the company. Richard was quiet for a long time. Then he said, I did the same thing once. Elena looked at him, startled. Your mother, he continued. I loved her, but I loved my work more, or I thought I did. By the time I realized what I'd lost, it was too late. Elena's chest tightened. Her mother had left when she was 12. She'd never understood why. She asked you to choose, Elena said quietly. She did, and I chose wrong. He met her eyes. Don't make the same mistake I did. I already have. Then fix it. I don't know how. Yes, you do. You're just afraid. Elena's hands clenched in her lap. What if he doesn't want me back? Then you'll survive. You always do. He paused. But what if he does? The question hung in the air, heavy with possibility. Elena stood. Thank you. For what? For being honest. Richard nodded. For what it's worth, I think you're braver than I ever was. Elena didn't feel brave, but she left his apartment with something she hadn't had in days. Hope. The next morning, Elena called a press conference. Her PR team tried to talk her out of it. Her lawyers threatened to quit. Her board demanded she reconsider. She ignored all of them. She stood in front of a room full of reporters, cameras, and microphones, wearing a simple black suit, no armor, no script, and told the truth. My name is Elena Voss, and everything you've read about my marriage is true. The room erupted. Questions shouted from every direction, cameras flashing, but Elena held up a hand and somehow they quieted. I entered into a contract with Noah Carter, she continued. He needed help saving his daughter's life. I needed someone to improve my public image. It was a transaction, a deal. Nothing more. She paused, her voice steady but raw. But somewhere along the way, it stopped being a deal. I didn't plan for it. I didn't want it. But I fell in love with him, and with his daughter. And I was too afraid to admit it, to him, to myself, to anyone, because I've spent my entire life believing that needing someone makes you weak. The room was silent now. I was wrong, Elena said. Loving someone doesn't make you weak. Walking away from them because you're too scared to try, that's what makes you weak. And I was weak. I chose my company over the people who mattered most, and I lost them. Her voice cracked, but she didn't stop. I'm not here to ask for sympathy. I'm not here to spin this into something it's not. I'm here to say that I made a mistake. And if Noah Carter is watching this, she looked directly into the camera. I'm sorry. I'm sorry I wasn't brave enough. I'm sorry I let you down. I'm sorry I made you feel like you weren't enough when the truth is, you're everything. The silence stretched. Then Elena stepped away from the podium and walked out, ignoring the chaos erupting behind her. Noah was sitting on the apartment floor helping Mia build a fort out of couch cushions when his phone started blowing up. Texts, calls, notifications, all from people he hadn't heard from in weeks. He ignored them. Until one text came through that made him stop. It was from Dr. Patel. Turn on the news. Frowning, Noah grabbed the remote and switched on the TV. And there she was, Elena, standing in front of a room full of reporters, telling the world everything. He watched, frozen, as she admitted the truth, as she apologized, as she looked into the camera and said his name like it was the only word that mattered. When the clip ended, Noah just sat there, heart pounding, trying to process what he'd just seen. Mia tugged on his sleeve. Dada, who's that? That's Elena, he said quietly. Is she coming home? Noah didn't know how to answer that. The doorbell rang. He wasn't expecting anyone. He stood, walked to the door, and opened it. Elena stood on the other side. She looked exhausted. Her eyes were red, her hair was loose, and she was wearing jeans and a sweater. No suit, No armor, just her. "Hi," she said. Noah's throat tightened. "Hi. Can I come in?" He stepped aside and she walked into the small apartment, glancing around like she was seeing him for the first time. Mia ran over, squealing. Elena. Elena crouched down and Mia threw her arms around her neck. Elena closed her eyes, holding her tight, and Noah saw her hands shaking. "I missed you," Mia said. "I missed you too, sweetheart." When Mia pulled back, Elena stood and looked at Noah. "I saw the press conference," he said. "I meant every word." "I know." They stood there, the air between them thick with everything unsaid. "I'm sorry," Elena said quietly. "For all of it, for choosing wrong, for being too afraid to fight for us, for making you feel like you weren't enough." "You hurt me," Noah said. "I know. You walked away when I needed you. I know. And I don't know if I can trust you not to do it again." Elena's eyes filled with tears, but she didn't look away. "I can't promise I'll be perfect. I can't promise I won't mess up, but I can promise that I'll try. Every day, for the rest of my life, because you and Mia—" Her voice broke. "You're the best thing that's ever happened to me, and I was an idiot for not seeing it sooner." Noah stared at her, and he wanted to be angry. He wanted to hold on to the hurt, to protect himself from getting broken again. But he couldn't, because he loved her. He'd tried to stop. He'd tried to walk away. But love didn't work like that. It didn't shut off just because it was inconvenient or painful or terrifying. "I love you," Elena whispered, "and I don't care if the world knows. I don't care if it costs me everything. I just need you to know." Noah's chest ached. "What about your company?" "I don't know. Maybe I lose it, maybe I don't. But I've spent 30 years putting that first, and I'm done. I'd rather lose the company and have you than keep it and lose everything that matters." "You mean that?" "I do." Noah took a step closer. "If we do this, it's real. No contracts, no conditions. Just us. All in. I'm all in. Even when it's hard? Especially when it's hard." He searched her face, looking for doubt, for hesitation, but all he saw was her, raw, honest, vulnerable. "Okay," he said. Elena's breath hitched. "Okay? Yeah, okay." She started to cry, and Noah pulled her into his arms. She buried her face in his chest, and he held her, feeling like something that had been broken was finally starting to heal. "I'm still mad at you," he murmured. "I know. And we're going to have to work through this. It's not just magically fixed." "I know. But I love you too." Elena pulled back, eyes wide. "You do?" "Yeah, I'm an idiot too." She laughed through her tears, and Noah kissed her. It wasn't like the first time. It wasn't desperate or rushed. It was slow and certain and full of all the things they'd been too afraid to say. When they pulled apart, Mia was staring at them with a huge grin. "Are you staying now?" she asked Elena. Elena looked at Noah. He nodded. "Yeah," Elena said, crouching down. "I'm staying." Mia cheered and threw herself at Elena again, and Noah watched the two of them, feeling something settle in his chest. This was his family. Imperfect, complicated, built on mistakes and second chances. But his. 2 months later, Elena stepped down as CEO. She didn't lose the company. She handed it over to someone she trusted, stayed on the board, and shifted her focus to the parts of the business she actually cared about: innovation, development, the work that had made her fall in love with it in the first place. It was terrifying, but it was also freeing. She and Noah got married again. For real this time. No contracts, no cameras, just them, Mia, and a handful of people who actually mattered, standing in the garden where Mia had once handed Elena a dandelion and changed everything. They moved into a new house, smaller than the compound, warmer, the kind of place where Mia could run through the halls and no one would care if she left muddy footprints. And slowly, carefully, they built a life. It wasn't perfect. They fought. They struggled. There were days when Elena's instinct was still to close herself off, and days when Noah's fear of losing everything made him hold on too tight. But they worked through it, together, because that's what love was. Not a contract, not a transaction, not something you could control or negotiate or buy your way out of. It was choosing someone, every day, even when it was hard, especially when it was hard. One evening, a year after the scandal broke, Noah found Elena sitting on the porch, watching Mia play in the yard. He sat beside her, handing her a cup of coffee. "Thanks," she said. They sat in silence for a while, and then Elena spoke. "Do you ever regret it?" "Regret what?" "This, us, everything that happened." Noah considered the question. "No. Even the hard parts?" "Especially the hard parts." He looked at her. "The hard parts are what made it real." Elena smiled, resting her head on his shoulder. "I never thought I'd have this." "Have what?" "A family, a home, someone who loves me even when I'm a disaster." "You're not a disaster. I'm a work in progress." "So am I." She reached for his hand, lacing their fingers together. "Thank you." "For what?" "For not giving up on me." Noah squeezed her hand. "I could say the same to you." They sat there as the sun set, watching Mia chase fireflies, and Noah realized something. He'd spent so long fighting to survive, to keep Mia alive, to hold on to the fragile pieces of his life. But this wasn't survival. This was living, and it was better than anything he'd ever imagined. Mia ran up to them, breathless and laughing, holding a jar full of fireflies. "Look," she said, "I caught them." "That's amazing, sweetheart," Noah said. Elena smiled. "Should we let them go?" Mia thought about it, then nodded. "Yeah, so they can be free." She opened the jar, and the fireflies drifted out, glowing in the twilight, disappearing into the sky. Noah watched them go, and he thought about cages, about the ones people built to protect themselves, about the ones they locked themselves in without realizing, and about what it took to break free. It took courage. It took trust. It took being willing to fall and believing someone would catch you. But most of all, it took love. Not the kind you bought or bargained for, the kind you fought for, the kind you chose, the kind that cost you everything and gave you even more in return. Noah looked at Elena, then at Mia, and he knew. They'd all been trapped once, by fear, by circumstance, by the belief that they had to face the world alone. But not anymore. Now they had each other, and that was enough.